Hello and welcome to a conversation with me, Nick Russell, talking to another Nick Hussey, the co-founder of Frahm. Frahm are a company based near Bath who, in their own words, make tougher, more beautifully detailed jackets for your real world, a world that's as tough as it is beautiful. Nick's career shows an interesting progression from the film industry through to founding one of the world's leading cycle clothing brands. This company saw spectacular growth before collapsing several years later, causing Nick to have a nervous breakdown. An experience that he talks candidly about and is one of the reasons why Frahm is officially in Aid of Mind, the mental health charity, and donates £10 from every jacket sold. I wanted to find out what drives Nick and also hear his advice for accessing startup funding. I hope you enjoy what's a very honest and open account of building a leading brand on both the lessons of startup failure and focusing on doing what he clearly loves doing incredibly well. There's a bit of background noise in the recording, but when you know it's the sound of orders being fulfilled, it serves as an off-screen reminder of how fantastically well they're doing.
Hello, my name's Nick Hussey and I'm the founder and designer, marketing monkey of Frahm Jacket, frahamjacket.com. We make men's high-quality jackets for the outdoors mostly, and we are also officially in Aid of Mind, the mental health charity.
Fantastic, and I'm one of your customers, and I can really vouch for the incredible products that you make, and we'll maybe talk about that a little bit in a moment. Just winding back before Frahm, I've browsed through your extensive experience you got a wonderful, interesting LinkedIn profile, and I'm curious how you made the transition from a degree in sports science to through film production and marketing and brand development to where you are now.
Basically, I didn't really know what I wanted to do or be when I was younger. Well, actually, what I wanted to be was a chef, and then I realised that was too hard. And then I wanted to be a physiotherapist, and then I realised that I was never going to get the grades. But I was a mad keen racing cyclist, and I just did a degree that was an enabler to that, just to learn how to be a better racing cyclist. I wanted to win the Tour de France, and then I did that and realised that I wasn't good enough and that it was never going to happen, and that I'm not much of a jock, and cyclists are definitely not jocks. They're all pretty chaste people, whereas pouring beer over your head seemed to be a requirement for my course, and setting lights to your farts, and that's not really my thing. So I didn't really enjoy my course, and so I just sort of left, and I was really into clubbing, and I ended up running clubs and just enjoying management. I'm actually a very hands-on person. I love doing things and meeting people. I'm very people-focused. And, customer calling. I'm going to just put my phone on silent. There we go. And so I just sort of drifted through careers. It was very service-led, i.e. people-led. And I just got loads of general management experience. Moved into being a wine merchant for better hours because I was quite interested in it. And then Emma Lou, my wife, who I've been with for a long time since we were young, just said, look, you should work in media because you're a creative person. And so I used my sort of sales and people skills to basically sell directors to ad agencies and music companies. And I discovered that I was quite good at selling. And all the time I'm bringing in these general skills in marketing and design now, because I'm working in film and design, film, animation, all that stuff's sort of the same sphere, but not. I have no real actual formal skills, just a general wash, lots of stuff I was interested in. And then I was working as an exec producer, basically running a film production company in London, getting very well paid, which is great to do something I hated. Very political, very hard work, very stressful. And so I wanted to create this idea, which was basically commuter cycling clothing that you could wear on and off the bike that actually you wanted to wear. Because most cycling gear, if you're not a racing cyclist, is really horrific. My wife would say, oh my God, these bib shorts are like the worst garment you could possibly think of. It's like wearing a nappy. And she's right. She's still right. And so I left film at the end of 2009 and started this company. I just thought, you know what, I think, because I've always been such a generalist, because I have this sort of creative bent and people bent, I get the feeling I just need to find out actually what I'm good at, and I think I should run my own business. I think that's a good challenge. And it was. And so I spent 2 years, this is the extended version, but it's worthwhile building it out. And 2 years basically setting up the company and finding investment, because I was convinced I needed a fair bit of investment to kick off.
And this company you're talking about is the Vulpine Cycling Apparel Company.
Yeah, so it's called Vulpine Cycling Apparel Clothing, and it launched in March 2012, and it just grew really fast, mainly through brand marketing and great products, and that's kind of what I'm good at. And then it sort of started to struggle, and because it started to hit areas that I wasn't good at, the boardroom, finance, operations, the organizational stuff, not handing things off, too much investment actually means more pressure. And it went bust in May 2017. To lots of people's great surprise, because it was quite a big deal in some spheres, and it had a lot of press. But growth doesn't mean safety. Cash means safety, which is the big lesson I learned of many, many lessons. I had a nervous breakdown after that, and I was suicidal, which I'm very open about. And that was mainly through burnout, but also just the shock of going bust, the reaction to that, just being completely exhausted, a whole mix of things. And so when I came out of that and I recovered, I resolved that I would start another business because I'd learned so much. My wife supported me through that, which is very good of her, because we'd really been through the ringer and huge debt, and it was a really terrible thing being through. And I just thought, no, I've learned so much more. I should be so much better at this, because you learn best from failure. I really want to do something around mental health, so I'm just going to make jackets. I'm just going to sell them online. I'm just going to do it for men, because I want to simplify, which is a big thing I learned as well. And I'm going to be officially an aid of mine, because I want to do something for mental health. I'm going to have a men's brand that helps, not hinders, mental health. And I hope that's what we're doing now.
Fantastic. And I love the way your progression has been through identifying things that you love doing, and then using your people skills and growing those networks. And really, that is a great case study of how that is the most important thing.
Yeah, chasing my passions.
Chasing your passions and learning from your mistakes.
I see the passion as a superpower. I don't mean that in a sort of, I'm amazing. I just mean, if you're going to do anything, in my opinion, you go for the thing you really care about. And usually your passions also tend to be what you're good at, or could be good at. Because I wasn't good at a lot of that stuff when I started. Okay.
Just talking a bit about your experience with raising funding for our students in Exeter, and the engineering and entrepreneurship degree actually gives them an opportunity to set up mock companies, and then they work in teams and they turn an innovative idea into a branded product or service. So they actually do a video and promotional stuff, and every now and then that will actually spin out and become a real company. And we've got an investment board that can actually give them a lump sum to start up with as well. So I was just wondering if you could share your experiences on accessing startup funding for a fledgling company, assuming you've got no network and no existing reputation.
Yeah, so that's how I started. So September 2010 is when I first had to raise investment, and I had decided that because I wanted to start with 5 products and I had to get them made at a certain volume to be allowed into the factories at the high quality I wanted, that I would need about £200,000. In the end, I raised £172,000, and I didn't have a clue where to start. We didn't really have crowdfunding systems in place at that time, so I just started contacting, and this is a classic way to get going. I just contacted everyone.
Yeah.
I just knocked on doors and made phone calls and asked friends of friends of friends of friends. And I started talking to people in banking and finance and financial directors and anyone who might have a nugget of information. And what I realised, this business plan I corrected was rubbish. But there was a kernel of an idea that people were interested in. Rubbish in terms of the financials and how it was presented in a business-like way. But it just got knocked into shape, and as did my ego. I mean, you get a lot of rejection. You get a lot of people telling what you're doing is stupid. So you have to keep pushing through that. And eventually I got it to a point where I turned down millions of euros of investment from one of the world's largest brands. And I turned down a number of angel investors to take investment from 3 angel investors. And that was because I eventually created so much interest that it almost created its own hype. Which again probably goes back to my skills in marketing. But before I could do that, I had to get a good business plan that actually had financial rigor to it. Now that is the extremely long, very frustrating process I would never do again. And actually hopefully I never have to do that because it's built not to raise investment, because I have a pre-order system, raises the cash in advance. That's a separate thing. But if I was raising money now, what I would do is I would crowdfund. Now, I have the advantage of being good at marketing. And crowdfunding is essentially a marketing exercise that backs up a good plan. Now, obviously, there's different kinds of platforms. Kickstarter is very much a Kickstarter. It's pretty expensive money, but you basically are making a sort of sales proposal to people. I'm not particularly a fan of it myself, possibly because I haven't used it. I have used Crowdcube in the past in the UK, and I know the directors, so I really trust it. But that tends to be a more formal approach, and for larger sums of money. And I would just raise it through crowdfunding. But the process, what I found invaluable about the process of trying to raise investment through private investors was that I got knocked into shape. I learned some really hard lessons about what it is to make a business, and about what is attractive and what people want. And that actually there's a lot of bad people out there who want to skin you alive. And realizing what I wanted in life was to work with this kind of people and not this kind of people. And I didn't want to give that kind of control away. So when I've consulted in the past for other businesses who ask the same sort of questions, I go, what do you want as a person from this business, from your life? Do you want to have a huge multi-billion company, which is incredibly high risk and high stress, but that's your vision? Or do you just want something nice that you can feel proud of, that supports your family, which is essentially what I have at the moment? Because that very much gauges the type of investment, the type of investors you go for, the type of pressure, etc. Type of equity, for instance, assuming it's equity you give away, the amount, etc.
Yeah. So do you think with your first cycling company, the success kind of ran away with itself, and your exponential growth changed your focus, whereas you
I think that the growth became assumed, and therefore, it's tricky. I think that it wasn't about growth. It was about trying too many different things. So I had a very large board, and I made the mistake of giving my investors board seats, just saying, you're a clever person, you can have a board seat. I'm not realizing how important that would be later on in terms of control, and also how investors were having partial control of your company. Investors can be scared or can think in different ways. Really, you should have talents. Not that these people are talented, but you have specific talent which you lack in your business to fill in the gaps you have in the board. And so when people say we should go and do wholesaling, you go, okay, well, everyone's saying we should do wholesaling, we'll do wholesaling. We were not good at wholesaling. We were really bad at wholesaling. And things start to distract you. Instead of sticking to my vision, which I'd established in 2010, sell only commuter cycling clothing to men and women online, go. I started branching off, and those are hugely distracting and stressful, and they didn't work, and the business just lost its way. And the driver for that was my assumption at the time, which was probably correct, that I had to raise investment and to feed the beast to grow. And actually, having learned my lesson, it's exactly the opposite. What I do now is I realise that I am good at marketing, I'm good at creating interest. And so if I can find a way to make goods that are pre-ordered, so I get given my cash first, I think I can grow a company without raising a load of investment, which is now what's happening. But that was something post-crash that I made myself work out, because I thought, I don't want to do that model ever again. That destroyed the business and myself. And so, that is the power of in adversity and, when, what is it, what's the phrase? The necessity of me not wanting to raise investment caused me to change my model. I can remember a meeting with an investor when I was in the middle of Volpine saying, I'm not investing in your company because the clothing business model is a terrible, terrible model. And he was absolutely right, which is basically you spend loads of cash to buy loads of stock and then you sell it through the season. And at the end, you haven't sold it all, so you discount it, and then people wait for your discounts next time, so your gross margin goes down, 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 and but you have to come up with all this cash at the beginning, and it means that you could come up with hundreds of thousands, millions, or whatever your size of business is of cash. Whereas I don't. I say I'm going to gradually sell jackets, get cash, and then I've got enough cash to make them. And then what's left is our profit.
Yeah, it's the opposite model, isn't it? Because once you start discounting, that perceived value is reduced forever, and everybody will be waiting for when you slash the prices, which isn't any good for you or anybody. Whereas your current model, the value perception switched around. So the fact that you've got a pre-order, wait, and then there'll be a limited number available, that the desirability is increased as well. So.
Yeah, and that, I think the phrase I was looking for before was necessity is the mother of invention. When I had the time to think, I went, what are the rules of this business? What do I want from my life? What is going to change? And sitting down and not allowing myself to start until I had established what I thought was a strategy to learn from everything that I got wrong before, and being coruscatingly honest with myself about what I was good and bad at.
So my next question was, with hindsight, what would you have done differently? But I think you can actually answer that by looking at your current company, Frahm, because you said you've looked at the previous business, you've learned from your mistakes, you've worked out what your priorities are, and you're really putting all your heart and soul into building the new company with those values.
I think if there's I should get a neon sign made in the office, actually. Can I just check? We're doing some packing in the office. You can't hear that too much.
No, that's okay.
There should be a neon sign, and it should say simple. And simple is the coverall for everything. Simple board, simple finances, simple home life, simple working life, simple model, simple range, simple route to market. Because the thing about starting a business is there's so much, and there are so many opportunities. If things start going well, you're just going to have opportunities firing at you. And it's something that David Hyatt says is learning to say no. And I realised how important that is if I'd said no at the right times during Volpine's history, things could have gone very, very differently. Like I did a huge collaboration. I couldn't believe we won it. We were up against huge, massive multinational brands.
This was the one with Chris Hoy, was it?
I was trying to say it because I don't want to.
No, I remember it.
Anything negative about it because he was wonderful. It was just it was the wrong thing to do because it was just too big for us. We were choking on it, and that simplicity also means because as an entrepreneur, it's very easy to become incredibly tired and busy. If it's simple, you know exactly what you're doing, you can go home at night, you close your laptop and you go and do something else. It means that hopefully it doesn't always work out where your home life is simpler because your partner doesn't hate you because you're not there. Stuff like that. It all goes in. That's how I see it. The whole thing is holistic. Business and life is the same thing, but I'm that kind of person. Yeah,
and I think the testament to that would be our first conversation was on the chat bot of your website at about 11:30 at night. You did sell me a jacket though, so it does work.
Yeah, I did, but it's interesting because now I don't do live chat, and it's made a huge difference in terms of my life because, unfortunately, not my wife's yet, but because it's just constant distraction. And as you get busier and busier, live chat changed our business overnight. Probably put 70% on to our revenue. It's absolutely fundamental to what we do, but incredibly invasive. Usually very pleasantly invasive, but I can't run a business doing it. So we're hiring people to do it for us. We have to.
Absolutely. You can't be on the chat and buzzing with all your customers and followers and then try and get some sleep. You need to wind down and relax. It's just, otherwise you only go one way.
Yeah.
So Frahm's coming up to 3 years, isn't it now? By the look of things, you've got some fantastic plans and your growth, and you sell out every time you release something. So how are you going to manage that growth now, based on your previous experiences and your overall vision for the business?
Yeah, and it's really interesting because when in doubt, always return to your first principles. Why are we doing this? Because my wife runs the business with me. What's it for? So we don't get... If we were really ambitious and we're seeing this growth, we'd be like, right, let's go and raise investment. Let's go into international. Let's go and make trousers. Let's go and make this. And suddenly it becomes a beast and it controls you. So we're not going to do that. But basically, we've been growing really controllably last year, and suddenly we've seen enormous growth in the last six weeks, literally. And that is fascinating because suddenly everyone looks at each other and goes, okay, we're looking at a different beast now. How do we manage that growth without suddenly ramping up our costs? Because we get, in the past, one of the problems with Volpan is I went, we're growing really fast. Let's get loads of people to grow us to an even higher point. And suddenly your wage bill is massive. So if things go wrong, your costs suddenly outweigh your revenue massively. It's killer. So now, we've been careful about how do you have costs that are fluid so that you can take them in and out. So like service, hire people when we need them. But eventually we're going to have to commit, or we're bigger by then, blah, blah. But I think answering your question as simply as possible is we're currently handing off things that we're not good at, that we shouldn't be doing. So customer service. I'm as good as, probably not as good as plenty of other people out there who could do it better. Service goes. I oversee it with Emily. We know what's going on, but somebody else does it. It's below my pay grade, and I don't mean that in a snobby way. I have to run the company now. I have to be the managing director. I'm now more of a founder than a managing director. More of a managing director than a founder now. I have to manage, and service isn't managing. So that goes. We've been packing boxes, still are. Emily's been doing it next to me, my wife. And we're handing that off as soon as we can. Making a sensible choice about where we go in terms of a warehouse, who will do it better because everything will be more controlled. They'll have better choice in terms of couriers and service levels, in terms of returns and all this kind of stuff. But we couldn't do that before because we didn't have the means. Now we do. Now we have to do that because otherwise we'll choke on our own orders and we'll just end up filling stuff and packing boxes instead of managing. We've got Karen on the other side here who does production, so she's an expert. Used to work for Oliver Spencer, and thankfully she lives locally, and she controls our production, makes sure things arrive in terms of course there's risk in making things and it not arriving on time, or because our quality standards are extremely high, the thing you expect isn't the thing that arrives. And we're de-risking, basically, handing off and de-risking. And an interesting sort of final point, in terms of many, many things I could talk about, is finance. So now I'm looking for a part-time financial director because now we have to control our cash better. And we have a weird thing with the model I've created in that because we sell now almost entirely by pre-order, those aren't real orders, they're promises, and we can't call that cash fully realised. We have to wait until the factory drops the goods and we send it to the customer and they agree to keep them because they can refund them. And then it's our cash to use. So we're just sort of building up this cash reserve in case everyone goes, we don't want jackets anymore. But we know we've got cash, and it's extremely likely that we're going to get most of that. So it's quite a strange situation. And what that does, because there's some nervousness about that, because me and Emily don't have strong enough financial experience, we go, okay, get an expert, de-risk that, make it clear. Anything that we feel that we're shaky about, that we're not clear about, we're nervous about, hire someone, or employ someone to make it better. And that's very much what we're doing at the moment.
Fantastic. Some really good tips there. What you haven't touched much on, though, is the fact that you do all the designing as well. I mean, your passionate, obsessive attention to detail is where does that come from, and how do you fit that in with what already seems like more than a full-time job?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't really know. Indirectly, you would never have thought I'd end up as a product designer. I prefer to call myself a product designer than a fashion designer. I don't particularly like fashion. I like clothes and I like fashion, but I see fashion as ethereal and throwaway. I prefer things that last, that have structure, and have been carefully designed for what they do. Maybe I should have done a product design degree. Who knows? It doesn't matter because I'm here now. But when I was doing sports science, I was very, very interested in ergonomics and the way that things interacted with the body. So there was a bit of something there. And then I've just always loved clothes. Emily will testify that I used to wear some really appalling, weird stuff when I was younger. Or maybe it wasn't appalling. She obviously stayed with me. So, but sort of Hawaiian shirts with manga and all kinds. But I was just testing the water, and I think that I'm also very, very frustrated by things that aren't made properly. Like whatever it is, so it's a car door or a envelope or anything, I just get really annoyed. I go, come on. Like, I constantly buy other people's clothes to see what they're doing. I'm constantly disappointed. And I hope it's not biased. It's simply, I look at it and I go, didn't you even wear this before you used it? You can't machine wash this. It's too tight on the arms here. Now, I'm by no means perfect, but it's this sort of obsessive. I basically design for positive and negative reasons. I design for positive reasons because it's enormous fun. Yeah. And for negative reasons because I get really pissed off when people do things badly. I don't know why. It's just part of my personality. And I found out when I started Volpine, just because I thought, hey, it would be fun to design my own stuff, I found out I was pretty good at it. To my constant shock and surprise. I have no qualifications. But I do need experts to help me. So my experience of fabrics, of stitching, of cuts, is poor. So I need people like Karen and Simon, who freelance for us to help make sure that these ideas become rigorously designed end products.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because the more technical side of garment fabrication must be quite a skill, and not something you could just Google and watch a few videos on. No,
and there's very few factories that really do that well as well. And that's one of the hardest parts of doing all this, was actually accessing factories. You don't just Google it and just go, oh, here's a list of really good factories that make really outdoor performance/style jackets. It doesn't exist. You have to use contacts, you have to ask favours, and you slowly peel away the layers of the onion until you might find something. And then you've got to find someone to work with. If you're a startup and you say, I'm making 100 jackets, they'll go, what's the point?
Yeah.
If you go to China, they might say you need to make 2,000 or 5,000. And, that originally is why I felt I needed to raise significant investment, because it didn't seem like there was any way that I could access decent factories without spending a significant amount of money.
And those factories are located in the UK and in Europe?
Yeah, so we've got tend to make accessories in the UK. The UK is very good at things like scarves, belts, socks, things like that, which will be coming. We have just done scarves so far. There'll be a lot more. You heard it here first. And then we tend to make the lighter weight stuff in Portugal and the heavy weight, so most of our stuff, in Bulgaria. What I find really interesting, which also really, really annoys me, is that there's a few people who go, oh, Bulgaria, you're making it on the cheap then. I'm like, no, Bulgarians are really good at it. It's like, why would this particular country be poor at making things just because you haven't been there?
Yeah.
It's a bit of xenophobia there. I'll go off on one. But basically, it's a very, very good factory in Bulgaria that makes our stuff.
Yeah, well, the proof is in the products. And has Brexit affected that relationship at all, or that's okay?
It hasn't affected the relationship.
Sorry, I meant the logistics of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's horrific. It has got quite a bit of press in the Sunday Times and on the telly talking about it, which is sort of helpful. But basically, no, it's a disaster. I mean, I was anti-Brexit anyway, but for lots of reasons, business and personal. But no, we move goods, we move materials in and out of the UK and Europe. We make goods which move to the UK, move out to Europe and the rest of the world. And every single time any of those elements moves around, it just becomes incredibly hard. There's a huge amount of administration. There are extra costs. There's differences in VAT and duty, which not even the experts still understand. Yeah. And, we've spent a lot of money on tax experts. And even now they're still going, we don't know. And even now, the duty and customs officials still ignore the rules. Yeah. Because they hate Britain right now.
Oh yeah, and there's a lot of websites. If you try and buy something from Germany, like a pair of walking boots or a wheel for your bike, they detect you're in the UK and they say, sorry, we can't ship to your country. And I mean, that must be good for British businesses that people are being forced back to buy here. But
well, you're still going to get. The thing is, we're not a closed loop. So for instance, one of our main suppliers, British Miller-Rain, a lot of the cars on here are British Miller-Rain, based in Lancashire. Emily, I still need to change that from Yorkshire. Oops. But something written on one of the blogs where I say Yorkshire instead of Lancashire. But cotton doesn't grow in the UK. Cotton grows in India. So now, British Miller-Rain are not a British company, they're an Indian company in terms of duty, which creates all kinds of different issues. And maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong, but it's all very, very different. Britain is part of the world, and Britain has to move goods in and out to make the things it needs to make. We do not have a lot of titanium in this country, for instance, if you're making whatever. So, we need to have relationships.
Okay, I've got one last thing to finish off on, and this is something I actually read today, which I thought was really nice. And it said that important brands aren't in fact builders of brand, they're mood catchers. And I was just wondering if you could tell me what mood you think Frahm is capturing, and has the pandemic changed that mood in any way?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, because I build brands on passion, what I believe in. And when I was thinking about what Frahm, it wasn't called Frahm, it was just a jacket company, was going to be 3 years ago, I thought, right, I really want to make jackets. I love jackets, they're the best thing to make. I've got a great record in jackets. I've had them in the Design Museum, the awards and all this kind of stuff. I've got a proven track record in jackets. I'll do jackets, great. I'm only going to do men's because that means I have to buy half the stock and I have to concentrate on half the people. It's simple. Even though I've made women's wear and I want to make women's wear, I'm not going to. I'm going to be disciplined. And then you go, I want to combine this mental health thing. Oh, actually, men are really rubbish at mental health. They don't talk about it, and especially not middle-aged men like me. And I'm a very open and emotional person. I still find it difficult. Oh, thanks. Cup of tea, hooray! And so the real fear was that I'd launch a company that sells jackets and talks about men's mental health, and the two would just not gel. That men would go, hang about, mate, I just want a jacket. I don't want a whole sort of do-gooding thing attached to it. I just thought, you know what? I have a belief. And this is the problem, is it's not empirical. You just go, I have a belief that those things make sense. I have a passion about putting those two together, and I think if I can translate that passion, then it will gel. So I'm going to find out. And I was crapping myself, because that was the one element of the company I did not know if it would work. Because it's a little bit of magic. I don't mean I'm a magician, as in it's just something you can't quite touch. Yeah. You think you've got something, because it's creativity isn't always understood or isn't always wanted or appreciated by enough people. So you throw that creative thing that you're passionate about and you chuck it out there, say, it matters to me, I think it might matter to other people. And it turns out it's been incredibly important as a thing, as a sort of gelling agent to people appreciating the jackets, is the mental health attitude. Because men, particularly because I do aim for men between about 40 and 60, all of us have gone through something bad in our lives, whatever age you are. And unfortunately, you do tend to rack up more bad stuff as you get older. It's just natural. You're going further along the timeline. You have kids. Kids in itself is wonderful, but it's also tough. People die, all this kind of stuff, and you push yourself through your career. And I'm not saying life is rubbish. This is the key. Our tagline is tough, beautiful. Life is beautiful. I think that more now than ever, having almost literally peered over the cliff. I know that when you pull back, you just think, oh my God, I'm so glad I'm here, rather than just taking it for granted. So I see the world as more technical and more beautiful, but I also recognise that it can be really fucking hard, and that sometimes it can be terrible and people kill themselves because it hurts so much. And so I want to be honest about that. And to actually say that to people as a brand that sells stuff, expensive stuff, is almost quite shocking. And because of that shock and because of that surprise, but that pleasant surprise, it sticks. And it sticks really closely with people. And I get stories from men telling me about their lives, and women as well. And so that brand is built out of something very intense. And it's about being as honest and just being as honest as you can about that, and not trying to put a sheen in it. Or, if LVMH decided to create a mental health brand, it would be a disaster because they just do it by numbers. You've got to go with your heart. And I happen to have a skill in that I'm just hyper open about stuff. And I don't think many other people will want to do it because I talk about everything. And I talk about my debts and, everything. So sometimes I wonder what on earth I'm doing. But yes, I think that... I don't know. It's that sort of strange brand magic. You can't write down a brand and fill in this little matrix and say that's a good brand. Because otherwise, it's probably anodyne and nobody cares.
Absolutely, and I think you're a really good example in doing the right thing by just sticking to what you do and doing it well. And you've defined that mood. I didn't realise tough, beautiful. That's actually your subtext of your logo, and that applies both to life and your products. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I changed that 4 times. I eventually settled on it a year ago. I just thought, that's what I'm trying to get at. It was about eventually finding a way to match the mental health aspect with the jackets. The jackets are really tough, and they're also beautifully detailed. And I don't know if it's clunky or not. I still feel a bit edgy about it. It feels right. And then you go, but life is tough, but it's also beautiful. And it's almost saying, when you're really low, it's worth carrying on, And it's something as serious and in your face as that. And what, to my amazement, really closed, blokey blokes, a lot of ex-military, for instance, are really engaged with that. And that makes me really happy because I'm reaching men who need to be reached. Yes.
Brilliant. And I've got the thermal military parka, and we've had this cold snap for the last couple of months, and I reckon I've actually been outside more because of my jacket. It's something that you actually feel I want to put that on and go outside. I guess it's like when people want to build habits, they have to start with a focus, and that might be, if you want to meditate, you've got a chair and you think, when I see that chair, I'm going to sit in it, and just start with 10 seconds and build that up every day.
Well, I didn't answer just a little aspect of your last question, which was how that's been affected by lockdown and COVID.
Exactly.
Actually, I feel guilty because I think that's really helped us grow. Because what is the one thing you can do at the moment and that's good for you? And that is getting outside. It's good for your head and it's good for your body. You want to get out. You want to get away from the house. You want a change of circumstance. And so, you want a jacket. You want a decent jacket. A lot of the people I sell to are not spending their money. So I'm going to spend money on a really good jacket. It's going to last me ages. And also, actually, lockdown's been really rough. And it's rough on other people. And these guys give money to mental health charities. It just feels like, and this is the other element of building business is a bit of luck. I'm not saying it's good luck. I'm not saying it's the right thing, but being at the right place at the right time with a message that you believed in has suddenly turned us into a business that probably I would have hoped would grow well into a business that's rocketing, because it's just doing just the zeitgeist, I guess. I didn't expect it to be. I don't even want it to be, because obviously it's a rubbish situation.
That's great. Well, that's really interesting, and thank you for sharing that story so concisely. And you've covered far more than what we originally thought, which was just funding. You've talked about your brand story, your growth, and your vision for how a business really should be when it's driven by such purpose-led, passionate people like yourselves.
Thanks.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.